Welcome back to Israel Inspired Radio. This is Jeremy Gimpel with Ari Abramowitz. We have a treat for you today. We're not just here with one tzaddik. The whole room is filled with righteousness now.
I know the difference between before the break and right now is tangible. The Kedusha, the holiness of Jerusalem is in here with us. I feel it in a really extraordinary way. We have with us someone that has changed my life personally in an extreme way, has changed the landscape of Jerusalem in an extreme way, and has brought the Torah that our times and our generation is calling for, is thirsty for, is needing. You know, it says there will be a time where there will be a hunger in the land. The hunger will not be for bread and the thirst will not be for water, but to hear the word of God in an authentic way, in an Israel way, in a Jerusalem way. And we have here Rabbi Sholom Brodt. Rabbi Sholom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we're giving a round of applause here. And we also have Pesach Stadlin and Yisrael Smith, who have both joined us as well to talk not only about Yeshivat Simchat Shlomo, but a revolutionary project and undertaking that they are doing, which really makes me deeply regret the fact that I wasn't born 10 years earlier, because I would love to do this program, and you know what? With God willing, I will be able to do it. First, let's start with Rav Sholom. Please tell us, what was your inspiration in founding Yeshivat Simchat Shlomo? What was the idea and the energy you wanted to bring to the world?
Did you ever hear the line, make him an offer he couldn't refuse?
I certainly did.
You did. Well, that's what happened. I got an offer from above, literally open a yeshiva. So when I heard it, I went downstairs to Judy and I told her that the word came down that we have to open a yeshiva, and this was 11 years ago, and 2 weeks later we were open.
2 weeks after that idea came down?
Yeah.
So why Simchat Shlomo? Why that name?
It's named after Rabbi Sholom Carlebach. And Rabbi Shlomo was always talking about joy and trying to get everybody to be besimcha. And he insisted that if you're not filled with joy, you're not completely one with God.
So it's different than a lot of the other experiences that I've had, where it's about learning this law and learning that law. This is about learning how to experience joy, and the rest of the Torah that's taught is almost details.
The Torah is the Torah. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, serve God with joy. So you can't really separate the two. You can't divorce the two. At least we're not supposed to.
So you've been, the yeshiva has been a beacon, a refuge for people from around the world that are coming and seeking to connect to a more holistic Torah that is filled with joy and depth and also mysticism. And now you're starting a new program, a smicha program, to give rabbinical ordination to another generation, hopefully many generations of rabbis, which is so exciting for me, because I feel like the appetites, the needs of the Jewish people are changing and shifting and evolving. And what at one point did not fill that tremendous thirst, did fill it, does not fill it today. So let me ask you, Pesach, tell me about yourself. How did you get connected, and tell us about this program?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a pleasure, an honor to be on your show. I love your show. I'm Jewish, and I grew up Jewish, and I found myself being in positions where I was called upon to teach Jewish values and about Shabbat, the Sabbath. My twin brother and I opened up a Jewish summer camp in America, and I just found myself in positions where I'm a Jewish educator. And before I was a Jewish educator, I was traveling around the world, and I wanted to be learning, to be growing, yeah? And through friends, I found out about Shlomo Carlebach, the rabbi, the music rabbi, the singing rabbi, the rabbi who teaches the Torah of the heart and the Torah of this life. And it was meaningful and relevant, and my heart was stirred. And I started practicing what he was talking about, and I found that my life was becoming more beautiful and meaningful, and my relationships were getting deeper. And so somebody gave me an archive of his teachings, of his live recordings, his bootlegs. And when I was traveling the world, that was my yeshiva. I had a traveling audio yeshiva. And when I came to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, when I made Aliyah, so I met Rabbi Brodt and I met the yeshiva, and now I'm in the Smicha program, learning to be a Jewish rabbi and hopefully to carry on this way of sharing Judaism in a way that's beautiful and meaningful and relevant, and with singing and song and dance.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because the smicha programs that I'm familiar with, you sort of learn, don't eat this, this is kosher, this isn't kosher, here's Shabbos, here's some laws here. Very little to do with spiritual growth or connecting people to God or the Torah that you're speaking of now. How does this smicha program sort of, do they combine sort of law and heart? Do they sort of bring the halacha as well as the spirituality together? How does it look?
Yeah. So the program that we've been working to put together, and Baruch Hashem is will be launching, God willing, in Cheshvan, combines Limud Torah as it's well known in Yeshivot, meaning textual learning, and getting deeply involved in Jewish texts. But at the same time, we're looking to go much more broad, much more to build a person, right? To really build a person and include deep learning of Chassidut, a deep spiritual connection, and what it means to connect to the Torah and take that Torah into oneself and build oneself with the Torah that you're learning and build one's spiritual world. Also to create, in addition to this, we also have a mentoring option as part of the program where people, if they want to build, part of the 2-year program will be to if a person has something that's particularly close to their heart, whether it be music or whether it be writing or whether it be meditation or something in this field, it'll give them the opportunity to pair up with someone we know in the community who's deeply involved in this kind of work, and to develop outside of themselves also.
It's interesting, Rabbi Shlomo gave smicha to a few people when he was alive, and Rabbi Sholom being one of them. Did he give a certain track of what you should be learning, and now you're sort of replicating that for others? Or was that your own special, unique, individual path that he gave you, and maybe you're giving other people their own individual paths? How does that look?
He didn't leave us with any formal path. So the path that we're taking is based on the years of study that I did with him, and hopefully what I actually got to learn from him. If you've ever had the chance to be at a Shlomo event where he was teaching, you'll know that he always went around first and embraced everyone, and then he would start with singing, and he would tell stories, and then he would teach. And he would every so often stop and sing some more and so on. And it was clear that he was showing us, he was role modeling exactly the kind of learning that we should be doing, that integrates mind and heart and mind.
Pesach.
Yeah, so to use Shlomo's words, he would teach about light and vessels, the importance of having light, the simcha, and then vessels, the container. So your question was about halacha and learning Jewish law, and how does that play in, and Shlomo sort of was, he really took root during that hippie era in the 60s, right? And Haight Nash in San Francisco. And he played in these folk festivals where there was so much light and love, but not necessarily like strong containers. Some say that's why that whole revolution, didn't go completely viral, the world, because it didn't have strong, it didn't have like set practices and things like that. So I just came from the yeshiva a few minutes ago, actually, and we do learn laws and guidance for how to practically live your life, and then the light for how to fill the vessels with music and with joy and simcha. So light and vessels.
So tell me, one thing about Rav Shlomo that I saw and that I've heard and that I've read, and I didn't merit to meet him, was it seemed like when he met someone, he connected with them where they were, for who they were right now. And not only on an individual level did he do so, but I think he connected to an overall generational experience. Do you feel, Rav Sholom, that the needs of the Jewish people have changed since those times? You have so many Jews from around the world coming through your doors of the yeshiva. What do you see? Do you see any patterns, any themes that really could give insight into the Jewish psyche, particularly that which is alienated and disenfranchised from the Judaism today?
I think that what Reb Shlomo started has to be continued. I don't think that there's that much of a change in terms of what we need. You know, when you keep in mind that I once heard somebody say that Reb Shlomo was the one who brought music and singing back to the Jewish people after the Holocaust. The remnants that survived the Holocaust, those that still continue to practice Judaism, had lost their ability to sing. Reb Shlomo brought music back to everyone. The Kabbalah says that Shari Negina is right next to Shari Tshuva. The gateways of song are right next to the songs of returning to Hashem. It has to be with joy. And it's an eternal need. There's a statement in the Talmud that if someone says all they have is learning alone, just Torah, just intellectual Torah, even Torah they don't have. If the heart is not involved, if you don't get involved in the prayer, and it's actually tremendously amazing that hundreds of shuls across the world are now singing Kabbalat Shabbat with Reb Shlomo's tunes, right? He had the keys to open up the hearts of the entire generation. I was just saying today in a class that I would imagine that it's very hard to find a single Jew in Israel who doesn't know at least one of his songs. Whether it's Yerushalayim or whatever it may be, everybody, when I get into a taxi, I just ask the taxi driver, did you know Reb Shlomo? He says, of course. I said, did you ever meet him personally? He says, no, but I know all the songs, you know. And this is something that happens all the time. You know, you see this everywhere. Hashem blessed him. He yearned for this, and Hashem blessed him to receive all those beautiful songs and to know how to open up the hearts.
So Pesach, I want to ask you a question. I know that just from listening to Mattel's show that you've written a book recently.
That's right, yes.
And so it was How to Attain Sustainable Bliss, was it called?
It's about the art of going from happiness to happiness. Yeah, and it's a lot of it is it's called Sustainable Bliss, a paradigm shift. It's about shifting the paradigm, the inner and outer paradigm towards life and towards happiness. And Shlomo would say there's two ways to look at the world. One that sees like holy and not holy and good and bad and beautiful and ugly. But he recommends tapping into a world that doesn't have opposites sometimes. He would call that sometimes the holy of holies. And to taste that, we have holidays where we experience, and we have Shabbat, the Sabbath, where we taste bits of this. And he says only, if you want to go into the world and try to elevate it, so first you have to know what healthy looks like, yeah? And so he would say, you have to know what is beautiful, what is holy, without an opposite. So the book talks about that a little bit. Yeah.
Which is interesting because you're coming to the Smicha program, obviously an author of a book. You already have like a worldview. You have like a message that you're already disseminating. What are you hoping to get out of this program that you don't have already now?
That's a great question. Because I'm a Jewish educator, I'm teaching Jewish law sometimes, Jewish ideas and values. I just want to be more of a master of my trade. If someone's going to lean on me and rely on me ever, I want to have a solid foundation, and I have a pretty good foundation, but I want to have a stronger knowledge.
So you've already made Aliyah now, and you live in Israel.
I made Aliyah. I study Torah every day, anyways. But it's good to have set learning. I have a set curriculum. I have elders and mentors guiding my learning, and I just want to be a solid servant.
Can you walk us through a day?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to be clear to all the listeners, so that we have an ordination program starting
after Sukkot.
After Sukkot, and
how many years is it?
It's a 2-year program, and so if you're a Jewish educator or just interested in learning more Jewish wisdom and Jewish knowledge and Jewish law, so we're opening a program in Jerusalem in the most beautiful neighborhood, Nachlaot. It's eclectic, diverse, musical. I live there, and there's violins playing at night and people singing in the alleys rampantly. It's right by the market, cobblestone streets, no cars for the most part. And in this little cozy alley, we sit and we study Jewish law. We study some mysticism, chassidut, song, storytelling. What we learn is halacha. Halacha means to walk. How to walk in the world. How to walk in the world in a good way without making such a big mess.
And so 2 years, you've gone through the training. You've accepted or received what you've received. What is your plan then afterwards? What are you going to do with it?
That's a great question.
All right.
We'll see.
That's the best answer. That's the best answer. Sometimes we get so lost in like what's going to be and what are we going to do with it, what the practical things are. The question is, do we want it now for the journey itself? That's what really excites me, is not the title of what is going to come out of this, but the journey itself. And you know, people need, there's a thing as a Rebbe and there's a Rav. Right, the Rav you call if you want to know if you can have milk dishes and meat dishes in the same sink and how that works. The Rebbe you call when you need a friend, when you need someone to lift you up out of the darkness and the depths. So I imagine that both will be coming from this program, a Rebbe and a Rav. But which do you think it leans more towards? Who are you trying to nurture and create here?
We're definitely we want to develop knowledgeable leaders who know how to speak to every Jew, who know how to reach the heart. Like Reb Shlomo once, when I was discussing with Reb Shlomo about putting together a book of his, and I asked him, what should we call it? And he says, Torah from the heart to the heart. So we want our students not only to know Torah, but we want it to be in their heart as well, so that when they speak to someone, like the Talmud says, words that come from the heart will go to the heart. And so I know that we just got a couple of seconds left. I want to say that we're launching our website yesterday, but it might not be up until tomorrow. So look for us at shlomoyeshiva.org for further information about the Smicha program, and we're inviting the whole world to come and learn with us.
shlomoyeshiva.org. We're here with Rabbi Sholom Brodt, Yisrael Smith, Pesach Stadlin, and we're, I think, witnessing the birth of something beautiful that will change the face of Israel and the Jewish people today. We'll be right back. Ari Abramowitz here with Jeremy Gimpel on Israel Inspired. That's Voice of Israel on voiceofisrael.com. Do not touch the dial. You will regret it if you do.
And now, live from Jerusalem, you're listening to Israel Inspired Radio on Voice of Israel. Here are your hosts, Rabbis Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel.
Shalom, and we are back. Ari Abramowitz here, along with Jeremy Gimpel, my Rebbe, my commander, best friend. When I say Rebbe, I say that quite loosely, because if I were to say it in a much more literal sense, it would be Rav Sholom Brodt, who's sitting right next to Jeremy. Rav Sholom, thank you so much for joining us. And we have with us Yisrael Smith, who will be sort of the backbone, strengthening the vessels of this new innovative yeshiva, the Shlomo Yeshiva, and Pesach Stadlin, who I think is sort of a poster child, I think, in some ways, for the yeshiva.
I'm a student.
A student, but one of those lifetime students, I think. Yeah. That's what makes you such a great teacher, is that you're a lifetime student. So, you know, we have to be conscious all the time that we have this international audience, people from around the world that are seeking to understand what is this magnetic pull, the spiritual energy that is coming out of Jerusalem to the world. And to so many Jews like myself, Rav Shlomo Carlebach, it's a household name. It's part of my identity as a Jew, who Rav Shlomo. But for those who never experienced or encountered Rav Shlomo Carlebach, this is to all of you, but let's start with Rav Shlomo. How would you explain who Rav Shlomo Carlebach was?
Should I answer in Yiddish?
A bissel.
A bissel? Yeah. Okay, so let's just start with a general question. Why is it that people are drawn to holy people? The fact of the matter is that we're composite beings. We have what Chassidut calls the nefesh bahamit, an animal soul. In other words, we have an operating system that is looking for self-gratification and self-preservation. And we have a divine soul called nefesh elokit. What happens often is that we get so caught up in the mundane world that we hardly ever remember that we actually have a divine soul. Not only that we don't think about it and we don't remember it, sometimes we think that we've actually lost it. But when you're in the presence of a holy person, the holy person, like Reb Nachman says, is always looking at your good points. And when you're in the presence of a holy person, you feel, wow, I still have a neshama, I still have a soul. Someone once asked Reb Shlomo in the 80s, it was an interview with a music magazine. This fellow asked Reb Shlomo, how many songs have you composed? And he said, should I show off or tell the truth? So he said, just tell me. So he said it was between 4,000 and 6,000. Then a few minutes later, the interviewer says, but you only play 3 chords. You're not such a great musician. Shlomo didn't say anything. A few minutes later, the interviewer says, you made over 4,000 songs with 3 chords. You're a genius. Now, the truth is that Reb Shlomo said he never composed a single song. He only received them. Reb Nachman explains that songs, negina, real music, comes from putting together all the good points, finding all the right notes. Reb Shlomo spent his life always seeing the good in people, and that explains why he was able to receive so many songs. And the reason that so many people responded so wildly to his music, and what a lot of people don't realize, and this is one of the things we're trying to bring out in the yeshiva, is also his teachings. People responded to this because it was being delivered from the heart to the heart. It was being delivered not as, I'm the master and you're just a student and take notes and be quiet, but rather he always recognized and valued the good in every person. And just by him doing that, that opened up the students, that opened up the audience to say, yeah, I do possess a divine soul. I do have something to say. I do have something good to share with the world.
You know, I'll tell you, it reminds me of the teaching about Avram Avinu, that I was raised believing that he was a missionary, and that didn't have the most positive connotations. What was he like? The witnesses that would ring the doorbell and say, hey, have you heard? What was it about Avram Avinu? I thought he was a missionary, but I actually don't think he was. I think what it was is that he recognized the truth of Ein Od Milvado, that there's nothing but godliness in the entire world. And hence, God is residing within the soul of every, not only Jew, because they weren't Jews then, every human being. And when he left God's prophetic presence to go welcome these pagans into his home, he wasn't leaving God's presence, but he was deepening that connection and that presence by connecting with those who he thought were just pagans walking by his tent. And I think he would bring them into his house and he would simply speak to them, to that part of them that's never been spoken to, that's never been addressed or identified, and they feel that coming alive within them.
But first he would feed them.
First he would feed them, which is, I think, a Jewish tradition that we've taken all the way from them. I don't think he had bagels. I don't know what he did without them. But yes, so that's a beautiful... Would either of you like to weigh in on who was Rav Shlomo Carlebach?
Yeah, Rav Shlomo, to me, I was talking with someone earlier today. I come from a generation sort of in between. I met a lot of Rav Shlomo's students and was able to hang out with them, and occasionally Rav Shlomo would show up either at the Moshav or in Yerushalayim. And what was clear from both Rav Shlomo and his students was tremendous Ahavas Yisrael. We tend, unfortunately, the Jewish world seems to be so sectarian and so broken up into groups. Rav Shlomo just didn't see it. He it's not that he loved each one. He loved this guy because he was a chassid and this guy because he was, whatever. Those distinctions just didn't exist. He loved everybody, and Baruch Hashem, that's something that passed on to his students also. Also Reb Sholom, Zocha to have learned with him sometime, and it's one of the things I was privileged to receive from him. If for that alone, Reb Shlomo came into the world, was to spread Ahavas Yisrael.
Love of Israel.
Love of Israel. That's a huge thing. It brings everybody closer and brings Geula closer.
So I never met Shlomo face to face, but I would say Shlomo Carlebach was a bridge from the old world, from European Jewry to Haight Ashbury in San Francisco. He had a house of love and prayer, and he was a friend. He was a friend to people. He was a truth speaker, a storyteller. He was filled with stories. He would speak to a room, and everybody felt like he was speaking just to them. And he was a song channeler, but mainly I'd say he was a truth speaker. I mean, he really had a gift of speech, and he could take he would open up a book of Rebbe Nachman, and he'd read like 2 words, and then he'd just go on a tangent to take that principle or the essence of a teaching and to weave it through parables and stories and analogies so that it became relevant for anyone who's in the room.
Yeah, it's the teaching that I would sum him up. I think there was even a movie made about this called "You Never Know."
You never know.
You never know, and I think that's one of the great teachings of Rav Shlomo Carlebach, that you encounter people and we have these snap judgments, but you just never know who are the hidden tzaddikim. And I think, Rav Shalom, you were blessed with much of these same attributes as Rav Shlomo, possibly because you decided to say Hineni, to make yourself available and to create this bastion of spiritual light in the heart of Jerusalem. I don't know what Jerusalem would look like without it. And I want to take this opportunity to tell people around the world that you go on tours, right? You don't only have incoming, you do outgoing.
Yes. I travel about 5 times a year, mostly to the U.S., East Coast, West Coast, still looking for some communities in between the East and the West. But I also do want to say one more thing, and Rav Shlomo was actually being primed to be one of the biggest Rosh Yeshivas in the world. He was a student of Rabbi Aaron Kotler, Rav Shlomo Hyman, and it was known that Rav Shlomo was a huge, huge Talmud scholar. I've heard people say that if you could make a list of the top 5 in the world, he was among the top 5. And he was once asked by Mickey Rosenthal of Sholom, he was asked, did you have any regrets that you left the yeshiva world and you went out into the world? And he said, if he would have stayed in the yeshiva world, he would be dealing with a difficult Rambam, and now he's dealing with a difficult Jew. And he said to us, that it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe of Sholom that told him, it's time for you to go out and speak to Jews. And Reb Shlomo said to him, what about my learning? And the Rebbe said, you'll have to sacrifice it. And he said that the Rebbe gave me a new soul at that point. And he went out to the world, and when people don't realize this, he probably spent as much time on airplanes as on the ground. He was constantly flying from community to community for well over 30 years. And he'd come into a town, be there for 24, 28, 30 hours, and by the time he left, everybody was exhausted, and he'd go to the next city, and to the next city, and to the next city. I also want to say that you're giving me a lot of credit for this yeshiva, but the fact is that most of the credit really goes to my wife, Judy. As you personally know,
I call her
Rebbe-student, okay. And she was also a very close disciple of Reb Shlomo. She was also actually ordained by him too.
Wow, that I did not know.
Don't tell anyone.
Folks, we're going to go out for a short break. When we come back, we're going to get some deep spiritual insights from the spiritual masters, mentors, and Padawans that are now learning to become mentors.
That's right. And also, check out this website, shlomoyeshiva.org. You could also email Rav Brodt at shulim26, SHULIM 26 at shlomoyeshiva.org. Fly him out to your community. Guaranteed you will not regret that. We will be right back. Do not touch the dial.
Voice of Israel, broadcasting from Jerusalem, voiceofisrael.com.
Shalom, y'all, from Columbia, South Carolina. We listen to Voice of Israel.
I'm from the Philippines. You're listening here at Voice of Israel.
Mabuhay! Kayo po'y nakikinig sa Voice of Israel dito sa Jerusalem.
Jestem Olga Abigail, muzyk z Jerozolimem i kocham Voice of Israel.
Oi Brasil, ao vivo de Jerusalém você está escutando voiceofisrael.com.
Voiceofisrael.com, connecting the world to Israel and Israel to the world.
This is Eve Harrow of Rejuvenation on Voice of Israel. In the years since we began to broadcast, you, our listeners, have had us here to educate, entertain, inspire, explain, arbitrate, and in general, bring Israel closer through a war and elections, innovations and insights, the highs and lows of an Israeli year. We intend to continue with your support. Subscribe today.
Welcome back to Israel Inspired Radio. This is Jeremy Gimpel with Ari Abramowitz. We're broadcasting live on Voice of Israel. Of course, that's voiceofisrael.com. We're here with people that are spiritual guides for me, for Ari, for the world, and we have an opportunity to broadcast their light from the world. So I always have some pretty big questions that I want to ask spiritual leaders. And so the first question that I want to ask is, aside from the mitzvahs that we have and the daily practices inscribed in Torah life, what are some daily practices and habits that you personally do to build your spiritual life as sort of tips for the masses to help us on our own journeys? Pesach, let's start with you and then go around the table. Personal tips to help me build my own spiritual life.
That's a wonderful question. Spiritual tips, I'd say the first is to have a healthy relationship with the self. I think that's really important before you're going to connect in a meaningful way with other people or even with the creator of the world, to have a healthy inner voice. So I spend time, cultivating a healthy inner relationship. I take care of my body. I try to have healthy inputs. Actually, again, a lightened vessel. So if you have a strong vessel, you can receive spiritual light. I try to breathe once a day on purpose. Take a breath. I try not to let things bother me that aren't necessarily I don't distort things to let them bother me. So again, there's like inner work, and then there's physical work, daily practices. I play music. I like to dance. I try to dance every day. That's a deep spiritual practice.
That's a good one.
I'll crank up some music and dance
alone.
Sometimes yeah. Yeah, that's.
I like them. I'll take those. I'm going dancing as soon as I get home.
Yeah.
You want to help us out, Rabbi?
I'd say daydream. It's good to daydream a bit. I think a lot of the activity of this world is sort of overcharged and focused on getting work done, doing this and doing that, and moving on to the next thing, and not leaving any time to sort of be open and listen a little bit and open up to what's going on around you, and be a cleat to receive and just to let the mind wander a little bit. There's tremendous value in letting the mind wander and seeing and following it sometimes to see where it goes.
Can I just share one more too? This is probably this is a big one. I try to spend time with the natural world. Spend time on purpose with like plants and animals and trees.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you do with them?
Oh, lots of different things. So I'll go for walks and I'll harvest wild medicinal plants, or I'll look for tracks of the animals. I climb trees and just sit, and being amongst creation is a very powerful tool. You can meet creator through creation. I call it meeting creator through creation. And I try to spend time every day.
The next time you climb a tree, I want you to call me.
Okay.
We can go together.
But like doing it on purpose, like with kavana,
Sure.
with intention. I'm going to nature to connect to creation.
Ari and I, we do that every once in a while. We're like, all right.
We climb trees?
No, we don't climb trees, but we're like, all right, we got to get out of the city. We're going out to the Dead Sea. We're just getting out and just going on a teal.
Yeah, maybe a shout out to the listeners. You want to try a simple, universal spiritual practice, like connect to an aspect of creation on purpose for even a minute. See what happens.
Rabbi Brodt, do you have any spiritual tips for us, how to build our own spiritual lives?
Well, just to carry on with what was said so far, there's a beautiful teaching, Kol HaNeshamata Halil Kad, that, in Hebrew, the word for soul is neshama. The word for breath is neshima. It's exactly the same word. So just to take a few moments every day, and as you inhale, to recognize that you're receiving life. You think that you're far away from God? No, every time that you're inhaling breath, God is breathing into you. And to welcome that and to receive it and take it in as another breath of life, another breath of energy, another breath of healing. The Mishnah says that the world, al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed, al ha'torah, val ha'avodah, val gemilut chasadim. So there's Torah, there's prayer, and there's doing acts of kindness. If you feel that you're not connecting with Torah, if you feel that you're not connecting with prayer, well, then go ahead and go visit people in the hospital. Go to the shuk and help some elder people carry their bags. Just go and do something kind for someone. Be kind. That you could be saving somebody's life just by saying good morning to them. And when you're helping somebody else come back alive, so you're going to come back alive too.
I know Rav Sholom said in one of his songs, and something that's always in my mind, or frequently, he says, the greatest thing you could do is to do somebody else a favor.
That's a quote from the P.S. Essner, from the Eish Kodesh, that was told to him by one of the survivors of the Holocaust. And in Yiddish, it's, P.S. Essner Rebbe used to say to his students all the time, Gedenkt kinderlich, remember children, the größte Sache in der Welt, the greatest thing in the world is zu tun jenem a Teuves, to do a favor to another person.
Wow.
All right, so I have one more big question out there. We're going to put it out there for you guys to answer. We have a lot of Jewish listeners, a lot of non-Jewish listeners. I think we had on our last show 10 listeners from Saudi Arabia. That's what the stats showed. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So here's the question. What does it mean to be the chosen people? Here we are as Jews, and here there are all these nations that are listening, and we sort of have to kind of walk this delicate line of saying, ha, we're chosen, you're not. Or is there really something maybe a little bit deeper than that? Remember, you want to start with that?
Yes, Rav Shlomo also used to visit Germany. And, there was a time that radio was very, very popular. People used to have like 100,000 listeners on a show and so on, and I hope that you have at least that many. So he was being interviewed on German radio, and the interviewer said to him, Hitler, Yemach Shemoy, said that the Aryans were the superior race, and you Jewish people say that you're the chosen people. What's the difference? And Rav Shlomo said like this. He said that he thought that because he thought that he was superior, that gave him the right to trample on whoever he wanted. When we say that we're the chosen people, it means that Hashem chose us to help everyone realize how special they are too. So to live as the chosen people means that you have to recognize the specialness of every person as well. If you don't, you're not going to succeed in doing what Hashem asked you to do.
So our chosenness is to bring out the chosenness in others.
Yeah.
Pesach, what do you say?
Yeah, first of all, salam alaikum to all the folks in Saudi Arabia listening. That's awesome. Chosenness. In Hebrew, it's segula. It's one of the ways it's said. Segula, segol is also the word purple,
So we're the purple people.
You said it, man. The purple people. And that purple.
So Barney was a Jew.
Purple is my favorite color.
You heard it here on the Voice of Israel. But purple, but it goes in with Sholom Brodt's Torah that it's purple's like one color. We're one nation, and you have to know what makes a rainbow so beautiful is that each color knows who it is. If every color in the rainbow is trying to be like the color next to it, if purple doesn't know its purpleness, and red doesn't know its redness, it's just a wash. What makes a rainbow beautiful is every tribe and nation and person and individual strand and color is its essence, and it sits nicely next to the other colors. So the purple people, we have to know, though, who we are. And on an individual level, too, like Jeremy, you got to know who you are, and what's your role, what's your segula, what's your chosenness, what are you here to do? And there's a chosenness in all of creation. You go out, you look at a plant. If you spend time, like I recommended earlier, and check out the natural world, you'll see every plant, every animal even, has its own little niche, its own segula, its own chosenness, its own thing that only a pine tree does what it does. And only a red-tailed fox does what a red-tailed fox does. Every niche of creation has its own chosenness. And so our nation also has a chosenness.
So I'll tell you, I was just thinking about what you're talking about, and Rav Sholom, it really affected me strongly because Jeremy and I in our travels have encountered this phenomenon here in Jerusalem that's not unique to us because there's entire wards of hospitals in Jerusalem, the only place in the world that has for Messiah complex. That's what they have because there's something about what happens when people come to Jerusalem that there's such an overwhelming power here. And a lot of people write these people off as crazy. But I don't think that they're crazy. I think what happens when you come here is you feel this momentum of consciousness shifting and awareness that's happening. And you sort of feel like it's coming through you in some way. And people that don't have the kalim, that don't have the vessels to realize that feeling is an invitation for them to be a part of it, but it's not them as an end in and of themselves. It's not them as a unique person, but they can be a part of this messianic consciousness that's coming into the world. That's what it is. And I think that as custodians of this city, we need to really fulfill the words of Isaiah the prophet, Ki beiti beit tefillah yikareh l'chol ha'amim. If Jerusalem is a house of prayer for all nations, and that's what we need to do, and that's why your Torah about empowering, we're the chosen nation to empower the rest of the world to be their best selves, to understand that the world is in some way on their shoulders, and they are a critical part of bringing it to that redemptive consciousness.
Beautiful. If we got 2 minutes left, Rabbi Brodt, if you had one message you would want to share with our listeners about what you're doing, about what they should know, what would your one last message to our listeners be today?
Ari mentioned Avram Avinu before, welcoming people into the tent. Rav Shlomo has a beautiful teaching about that, and he says every person wants to have space. But what's the problem? You have a body, you're taking up space, so you've got space, right? So he said, but a heart can only find its place in another heart. So the message from Avram Avinu that Rav Shlomo was emphasizing was, make space for people in your heart. Recognize that they need space, and their heart needs to have some space in your heart as well.
Beautiful. Ari, what's your last message to our listeners?
There's no way I'm going to give a follow-up last message to that. But essentially, I'll tell you why I go to my shiurim, my Torah learning at the Shlomo Yeshiva, at Yeshivat Simchat Shlomo, is because that's what it does. I could just be there, and even if I shut my intellect off, I emerge from the doors of that yeshiva elevated, because words that come from the heart go into the heart. And there's something that surpasses the cerebral, intellectual approach to Judaism that is being birthed here in Israel, that's experiential, that is uplifting. And that's the Shlomo Yeshiva, and I would love to be ordained at such a yeshiva, or even to spend one day learning at the Shlomo Yeshiva. If our listeners out there have the opportunity, go to the website. It's probably up by now. If not, try every moment of every day until it is up, because your soul lies in the balance. Ari and Jeremy here in Jerusalem. Shalom.